Staff Sergeant Maya Chen had been in the Army for 12 years, and she had learned one simple truth about military life. The people who kept everything running smoothly were almost never the ones who received the medals. She was fine with that. She had never joined the Army to become famous. She had joined because she wanted to serve her country and because she had a gift that very few people understood. Maya could shoot. Not just shoot well. She could shoot in ways that made experienced marksmen stop what they were doing and watch. She could put a bullet through the same hole twice at distances that seemed impossible. Her hands were steady like they were made from stone, and her eyes could pick up details that others simply could not see. But here she was, at Forward Operating Base Sentinel in a dusty corner of Afghanistan, working as the base armorer. Her job was to maintain weapons, repair broken rifles, and most importantly, zero the scopes on every rifle that came through her shop. It was not glamorous work. It was repetitive, careful, precise work that most soldiers considered boring. Maya did not find it boring at all. Every rifle that left her shop was perfect. Every scope was calibrated with absolute precision. She took pride in knowing that when a soldier pulled the trigger in combat, the bullet would go exactly where they aimed it. Lives depended on her work, even if nobody ever thanked her for it. The morning of September 14th started like every other morning. Maya woke up at 5 in the morning, did her physical training routine, ate breakfast in the mess hall, and walked to her workshop at exactly 7:30. The Afghan sun was already hot, and dust particles floated in the golden light that came through her workshop windows. She had 17 rifles to zero that day. A new platoon had arrived the previous week, and their weapons needed to be calibrated for the local conditions. Altitude, temperature, and humidity all affected how a bullet traveled through the air. A rifle zeroed in Germany would not shoot the same in Afghanistan. Maya picked up the first rifle, an M4 carbine belonging to a private named Rodriguez. She checked it carefully, looking for any damage or wear. She cleaned it thoroughly, applied a thin layer of lubricant to the moving parts, and then carried it outside to the zeroing range. The zeroing range was a simple setup. There was a covered shooting position with sandbags, a series of targets at different distances, and a small observation tower where spotters could watch the impacts. Behind the targets was a large earthen berm that caught the bullets. Beyond that berm was open desert, and beyond the desert were the mountains where the enemy liked to hide. Maya settled into her shooting position, adjusting the sandbags until she was perfectly comfortable. She loaded a magazine and took her first shot at the 25-meter target. The bullet struck slightly to the left of center. She made a small adjustment to the scope and fired again. This time, the bullet hit exactly where she aimed. She moved to the 50-meter target, then the 100-meter target, making tiny adjustments each time. Within 15 minutes, the rifle was perfectly zeroed. Private Rodriguez would be able to hit exactly what he was aiming at, assuming he had the skill to hold the rifle steady. Maya set the rifle aside and picked up the next one. This belonged to a sergeant named Williams. She went through the same process, careful and methodical. Shot, adjust, shot, confirm. The work was meditative, almost peaceful. The sound of gunfire from her range mixed with distant sounds from the rest of the base. Helicopters taking off, trucks moving supplies, soldiers training. By noon, she had finished 8 rifles. She took a short break to eat lunch and drink water. The temperature had climbed to over 40 degrees Celsius, and even in the shade of her shooting position, the heat was intense. She wiped sweat from her forehead and picked up rifle number 9. This rifle belonged to Lieutenant James Cooper, the leader of the new platoon. Maya noticed immediately that it was in excellent condition. Cooper clearly took care of his weapon. She appreciated that. Too many officers treated their rifles as decorations rather than tools. She was halfway through zeroing Cooper's rifle when she heard something that made her pause. It was a sound that did not belong to the normal rhythm of the base. A sharp crack, different from the controlled gunfire of the training ranges. Then another crack, and another. Maya lifted her head and looked toward the sound. It was coming from the eastern perimeter, near the main gate. She could see soldiers running, and she could hear shouting. Then she heard the distinctive rattle of automatic weapons fire. The base was under attack. Maya's training kicked in immediately. She grabbed Cooper's rifle, which was still loaded from her zeroing session, and ran toward the observation tower at her range. The tower was only 10 meters high, but it gave her a clear view across the base and toward the eastern perimeter. What she saw made her blood run cold. A vehicle had crashed through the outer checkpoint. It was a large truck, and it was heading directly toward the center of the base. Soldiers at the gate were firing at it, but the truck kept coming. Behind the truck, Maya could see more vehicles approaching. This was not a random attack. This was a coordinated assault. Maya raised the rifle and looked through the scope. The truck was about 400 meters away, moving fast. She could see the driver through the windshield. He was hunched over the steering wheel, determined to reach his target no matter what. She did not hesitate. Maya took a breath, let half of it out, and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked against her shoulder. Through the scope, she saw the windshield spider web around a small hole. The truck swerved violently to the left, then rolled over onto its side with a tremendous crash. For a moment, there was silence. Then the truck exploded. The blast was enormous, bigger than anything Maya had ever seen. The shockwave hit her a second later, even at 400 meters. Windows shattered across the base. The ground shook like an earthquake. A massive fireball rose into the sky, carrying with it a cloud of dust and debris. Maya stared at the destruction. If that truck had reached the center of the base, if it had made it to the mess hall or the command center or the medical facility, the casualties would have been catastrophic. Hundreds of soldiers could have died, but she did not have time to think about what might have happened. The attack was not over. The vehicles behind the truck were still coming, and now they were spreading out, trying to find other ways into the base. Maya counted 5 vehicles. They were pickup trucks with mounted machine guns, the kind that insurgent groups love to use. Each truck had a gunner standing in the back, firing at the base defenses. Soldiers were returning fire, but the trucks were moving fast, and they were spreading out to create multiple threats. The base was not prepared for this kind of assault. Most of the combat troops were out on patrol. The soldiers who remained were support personnel, cooks and clerks and mechanics. They could fight, every soldier could fight, but they were outgunned and outmaneuvered. Maya understood immediately what she needed to do. She adjusted her position on the tower, making herself as stable as possible. She had exactly 12 rounds left in the magazine, 12 bullets to stop 5 trucks with armed fighters. The math was not in her favor. But Maya had never been about math. She had been about precision. She picked her first target, the gunner on the closest truck. He was about 350 meters away, bouncing on the rough ground as the truck raced toward the base. It was an incredibly difficult shot. Moving targets were always hard, and this target was moving erratically on an unstable platform. Maya watched the pattern of the truck's movement, trying to predict where it would be when her bullet arrived. She calculated the travel time of the bullet, about half a second at that distance. She adjusted for the slight crosswind that was blowing from the north. Then she fired. The gunner crumpled and fell out of the truck bed. The mounted machine gun went silent. Maya did not celebrate. She was already moving to her next target. Another gunner, this one further away, maybe 420 meters. The truck was moving parallel to her position, which made the shot somewhat easier. She led the target by about 2 meters, squeezed the trigger, and watched the gunner spin and fall. 2 down, 3 to go, 10 rounds remaining. The insurgents realized they were being picked off. One of the trucks changed direction and started heading directly toward Maya's position. The gunner was firing wildly in her general direction, bullets snapping through the air around the tower. Maya forced herself to stay calm. Panic was the enemy of accuracy. She steadied her breathing, ignored the bullets cracking past her head, and focused on the approaching truck. The driver was her target this time. If she could stop the truck, it would create an obstacle for the others. The shot was about 250 meters. The truck was coming straight at her, which meant she did not need to calculate lead. She aimed at the driver's side of the windshield and fired. The truck veered sharply and crashed into a concrete barrier. Steam erupted from the engine compartment. The driver did not move. The gunner tried to swing his weapon toward Maya, but she was faster. Her next shot caught him in the chest, and he slumped over the mounted gun. 4 gunners down, 2 trucks disabled, 8 rounds remaining, but the remaining 2 trucks were still active, and they were now converging on the main gate from different angles. Maya had to make a choice. She could not engage both trucks simultaneously. She would have to trust that the base defenders could handle one of them while she focused on the other. She chose the truck that seemed to be heading toward the motor pool, where the base kept its fuel supplies. If that truck had explosives, and most of these attack trucks did, the resulting fire would be devastating. The distance was now about 500 meters. This was the edge of what the M4 was designed for. Maya adjusted her scope, adding elevation to compensate for bullet drop at that range. The gunner on this truck was firing at a group of soldiers who were taking cover behind a stack of sandbags. He had them pinned down, and if she did not act quickly, people were going to die. Maya took her shot. The gunner dropped. She immediately shifted to the driver, but the angle was bad. The truck was moving away from her now, and all she could see was the back of the vehicle. She could not get a clean shot at the driver. Then she saw something that gave her an idea. The truck's rear tire was visible. It was a small target, maybe 20 centimeters in diameter, at a moving vehicle 500 meters away. An almost impossible shot. Almost. Maya aimed low, leading the tire, and fired. The tire exploded. The truck lurched sideways. The driver lost control, and the vehicle rolled over 3 times before coming to rest on its roof. Dust and smoke obscured the wreckage. 5 rounds remaining. 1 truck left. The last truck had reached the main gate. The soldiers there were fighting desperately, but they were taking casualties. Maya could see wounded men being dragged to cover. The truck's gunner was spraying bullets everywhere, keeping the defenders pinned down. Maya's position gave her a clear shot at the truck, but it was now almost 600 meters away. This was beyond the effective range of the M4. The bullet would drop significantly at that distance, and even a slight error would mean a miss. She had 5 rounds, 5 chances to make an impossible shot. Maya blocked out everything else. The sounds of battle, the heat, the fear. There was only her, the rifle, and the target. She steadied her breathing, calculated the drop, adjusted for the wind, and began to squeeze the trigger. Her first shot hit the truck's hood, sparking off the metal but causing no damage. 4 rounds left. She adjusted slightly higher, compensating for more drop than she had expected. Her second shot shattered the truck's windshield but missed the driver. 3 rounds left. The gunner on the truck was now looking in her direction. He had figured out where the shots were coming from. He was swinging his heavy machine gun toward her tower. In seconds, he would open fire, and she would be torn apart by the heavy-caliber bullets. Maya did not flinch. She made one final adjustment and fired her third shot. The gunner's body jerked, and he collapsed over his weapon. She immediately shifted aim to the driver. The man was trying to turn the truck around, trying to escape. Maya followed him with her scope, tracking his movement, waiting for the right moment. 2 rounds left, no room for error. She fired. Through the scope, she saw the driver slump sideways. The truck rolled to a stop. The battle was not over yet. There were still fighters on foot, insurgents who had jumped out of the disabled vehicles. But the immediate threat, the vehicle-borne assault that could have killed hundreds, had been stopped. Maya lowered her rifle and looked at what she had done. 6 gunners and 4 drivers eliminated. 5 vehicles destroyed. Countless lives saved. She had 1 round left in the magazine. Maya sat down on the observation tower platform, her legs suddenly weak. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline rush giving way to exhaustion. She could hear soldiers cheering somewhere in the distance, the sound of victory mixed with the moans of the wounded. She did not feel like a hero. She felt tired and sad and overwhelmed by what had just happened. People had died today. Some of them were enemies, yes, but they were still people, and her brothers and sisters in arms had been hurt, some of them badly. But she had done what she was trained to do. She had used her skills to protect her fellow soldiers. And somewhere out there, in the destroyed vehicles and the cratered earth, was the evidence of something that could have been much, much worse. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen stayed on that tower for a long time, watching as the base came back to life. Medical teams rushing to help the wounded, firefighters putting out the burning vehicles, commanders shouting orders, trying to restore order from chaos. Nobody knew yet what she had done. Nobody had seen the lone figure on the armorer's observation tower, picking off attackers with precision shots at impossible ranges. In the confusion of battle, her contribution had been invisible. That would change soon enough. But for now, Maya just sat there, holding a rifle that she had been zeroing for Lieutenant Cooper, wondering how a routine morning had turned into the most important few minutes of her life. She had been just zeroing rifles. That was all. A boring job that nobody noticed or appreciated. Until one shot turned everything upside down. The first shot at that suicide truck. The shot that had saved hundreds of lives before the real fight even began. That single squeeze of the trigger had changed her fate forever. She just did not know it yet. As the sun began its descent toward the western mountains, casting long shadows across the battered base, Maya finally climbed down from the tower. She walked back to her workshop, placed Lieutenant Cooper's rifle carefully on the workbench, and sat down in her chair. She still had 9 more rifles to zero before the day was over, because that was her job. That was who she was. And no matter what had happened today, Staff Sergeant Maya Chen was going to finish her work. The rifles were waiting, and they needed to be perfect. The news of the attack spread through the military network like wildfire. Forward Operating Base Sentinel had been hit hard, but it had survived. The casualty reports were grim but not catastrophic. 12 soldiers wounded, 3 of them seriously. 2 Afghan translators killed. But compared to what could have happened, compared to the devastation that a vehicle bomb in the heart of the base would have caused, these numbers were almost miraculous. The question on everyone's mind was simple. How had the attack been stopped? Colonel Patricia Webb arrived at the base the following morning, flown in from Regional Command to conduct an investigation. She was a tall woman with gray hair cut short and eyes that seemed to see through walls. She had served for 28 years, and she had seen more combat than most soldiers would experience in 3 lifetimes. Her first stop was the scene of the destroyed lead truck. The crater from the explosion was massive, nearly 15 meters across and 3 meters deep. If that bomb had gone off anywhere near the populated areas of the base, the death toll would have been in the hundreds. The truck was stopped here, Colonel Webb said, looking at the crater and then back toward the center of the base. That's about 400 meters from the mess hall. The bomber was trying to reach the maximum concentration of personnel. Captain Harrison, the base intelligence officer, nodded. Based on the blast radius, we estimate the truck was carrying approximately 1,000 kilograms of explosives. If it had reached the mess hall during breakfast, we would have lost 200 people at minimum. Colonel Webb walked slowly around the crater, examining the surrounding debris. The truck crashed and exploded here. What stopped it? Gate security said they were firing at it, but none of their rounds could have caused this kind of sudden stop. That's what we're trying to figure out, ma'am. The truck clearly lost control before it exploded. The driver must have been hit. At 400 meters, while the truck was moving at high speed? With all the chaos of the attack happening? Colonel Webb's voice was skeptical. That would have been an exceptional shot. She turned and looked back toward the interior of the base, her eyes scanning the buildings and structures. Her gaze stopped on a small observation tower at the edge of the zeroing range. What's that tower? That's the armorer's observation post, ma'am. Staff Sergeant Chen uses it for long-range zeroing work. Chen? Colonel Webb repeated the name thoughtfully. Was she on duty during the attack? I believe so, ma'am. She works there every day. But I haven't taken her statement yet. She's not a combat soldier, just an armorer. Colonel Webb started walking toward the tower. Captain, in my experience, the most important witnesses are often the ones nobody thinks to ask. Let's go talk to your armorer. They found Maya in her workshop, carefully cleaning a rifle that had been damaged during the attack. She looked up when they entered, her face calm but tired. Dark circles under her eyes suggested she had not slept well. Staff Sergeant Chen, Colonel Webb said. I'm Colonel Webb. I'm investigating yesterday's attack. Can you tell me where you were when the assault began? Maya set down the rifle and stood at attention. I was at the zeroing range, ma'am. I was calibrating weapons for the new platoon. And when the attack started, what did you do? I heard gunfire from the eastern perimeter. I grabbed the rifle I was working on and went to the observation tower to get a better view of what was happening. Colonel Webb studied Maya's face carefully. And what did you see from the tower? I saw a truck crash through the checkpoint. It was heading toward the center of the base. I could tell it was moving too fast, like the driver did not care about obstacles. I realized it was probably a vehicle-borne explosive device. What did you do then? Maya met the colonel's eyes. Her voice was steady, but something flickered behind her expression. I shot the driver, ma'am. The truck lost control and crashed. Then it exploded. Captain Harrison's jaw dropped. You shot the driver? From the observation tower? That's over 400 meters. 412 meters, sir. I estimated the range based on the zeroing targets I had set up earlier. Colonel Webb held up her hand to silence the captain. Go on, Staff Sergeant. What happened next? There were more vehicles, ma'am. 5 pickup trucks with mounted machine guns. They were trying to breach the perimeter from multiple angles. I engaged them from my position. How many targets did you engage? Maya's voice remained calm, almost detached, as if she was giving a report about inventory numbers rather than describing the most intense few minutes of her life. I engaged 10 targets, ma'am. 6 machine gunners and 4 drivers. I also disabled 1 vehicle by shooting out its tire. The workshop fell silent. Captain Harrison was staring at Maya like she had grown a second head. Even Colonel Webb, who had seen extraordinary things in her career, seemed momentarily surprised. 10 targets, the colonel repeated slowly. At ranges up to what distance? The furthest was approximately 590 meters, ma'am. That was the last driver at the main gate. And how many rounds did you expend? 14, ma'am. I had 1 round remaining when the engagement ended. Colonel Webb turned to Captain Harrison. Get me the footage from every security camera on this base. I want to see exactly what happened yesterday. She turned back to Maya. Staff Sergeant, do you have documentation of your marksmanship qualifications? Yes, ma'am. I'm qualified expert on all standard infantry weapons. I also have completed the Advanced Marksmanship course and the Sniper Employment course, though I was never assigned to a sniper unit. Why not? With skills like yours, you should have been sent to a special operations unit years ago. Maya's expression shifted slightly, a shadow passing across her face. I was told I was more valuable in a support role, ma'am. My previous commanders felt that my skills in weapons maintenance were too important to lose. Colonel Webb heard what Maya did not say. She had been passed over, kept in a lesser role because someone had decided she was more useful fixing rifles than using them. It was a story the colonel had heard too many times before, especially with female soldiers. Wait here, Colonel Webb said. I'll be back. Over the next 2 hours, Colonel Webb reviewed every piece of evidence from the attack. The security camera footage was grainy and incomplete, but it told an incredible story. The lead truck crashing just meters short of catastrophe, the machine gunners dropping one by one, vehicles swerving and crashing, and through it all, occasional muzzle flashes from a tiny figure on a distant observation tower. She also reviewed Maya's service record. 12 years of exemplary service, top scores on every qualification course, multiple recommendations for special operations training, all of them denied or ignored. A pattern of exceptional performance followed by deliberate neglect. Colonel Webb had seen this pattern before. Female soldiers, especially those who excelled in traditionally male roles, were often shuffled into support positions regardless of their capabilities. It was wrong, and it was stupid, and it wasted talent that the military desperately needed. But today, that wasted talent had saved hundreds of lives. Colonel Webb returned to Maya's workshop late in the afternoon. She found the staff sergeant exactly where she had left her, still cleaning weapons, still doing her job as if nothing had happened. Staff Sergeant Chen. I've reviewed the evidence. What you did yesterday was extraordinary. You single-handedly stopped a coordinated assault that would have devastated this base. I'm recommending you for the Silver Star. Maya looked up, genuine surprise on her face. Ma'am, I was just doing my job. Your job is to maintain weapons, not to use them to stop enemy assaults. What you did goes far beyond your assigned duties. Colonel Webb sat down on a workbench, a surprisingly informal gesture from such a senior officer. Tell me something. Why did you stay in your support role all these years? With your skills, you could have pushed harder for combat assignments. Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was softer than before. My father was a soldier, ma'am. He served for 30 years, and he taught me to shoot before I could ride a bicycle. When he died, he told me something I've never forgotten. He said that the best soldiers are not the ones who seek glory. They are the ones who are ready when glory comes to them. Your father was a wise man. He was, ma'am. I've spent 12 years getting ready. I didn't know what I was getting ready for, but I knew that someday my skills would matter. Yesterday they mattered. Colonel Webb nodded slowly. They did indeed. But I think your days of zeroing rifles are over, Staff Sergeant. I'm transferring you to a unit that can actually use your talents. Ma'am, there's a special operations support unit that needs experienced marksmen for training and advisory roles. You'd be teaching others how to shoot the way you do, and when necessary, you'd be deploying with them to provide precision fire support. It's not a sniper unit, but it's a hell of a lot closer than this workshop. Maya felt something she had not felt in a long time. Hope. The possibility that her skills might finally be recognized and used properly. I'd be honored, ma'am. Good. I'll start the paperwork tomorrow. Colonel Webb stood up to leave, then paused at the door. One more thing, Staff Sergeant. I've ordered a full ballistics analysis of the engagement. Every shot you took is being documented. Do you know why? No, ma'am. Because what you did yesterday shouldn't have been possible. The shots you made, the ranges, the moving targets, the pressure of combat. No ordinary marksman could have done what you did. I want there to be a complete record of it, so that the next time some bureaucrat tries to tell a woman she belongs in a support role, there's evidence to prove them wrong. Maya did not know what to say. For 12 years, she had served quietly, doing her job without recognition, without complaint. She had accepted her role because that was what soldiers did. They followed orders and they served where they were needed. But Colonel Webb was right. What she had done deserved to be documented. Not for her own glory, but for all the women who would come after her. The ones who would be told they were not strong enough, not skilled enough, not suitable for combat roles. They deserved to know that a staff sergeant from a dusty workshop in Afghanistan had stopped an entire enemy assault with a rifle she was supposed to be zeroing for someone else. The days that followed were a blur of interviews, reports, and ceremonies. Maya had to retell the story of the attack dozens of times, to intelligence officers, to commanders, to reporters who had heard rumors of what had happened. Each time, she tried to downplay her role, emphasizing the bravery of the gate guards and the medics who had treated the wounded. But the evidence was undeniable. The security footage, the ballistics analysis, the testimony of soldiers who had seen her shooting from the tower. Maya Chen was a hero, whether she wanted to be or not. The soldiers at the base treated her differently now. Men who had barely acknowledged her existence before suddenly wanted to shake her hand, to buy her coffee, to hear the story directly from her. It was uncomfortable at first. Maya was not used to attention. She preferred the quiet solitude of her workshop, the mechanical precision of her work. But she also noticed something else. The female soldiers at the base were looking at her with a new kind of respect, not the grudging tolerance that she had grown accustomed to, but genuine admiration. One young private, a woman named Torres who worked in the motor pool, approached Maya after dinner one evening. "Staff Sergeant, can I ask you something?" "Of course." "How did you learn to shoot like that? I mean, I've been shooting since basic training, but I'm barely qualified. And you're like something out of a movie." Maya smiled slightly. "It's not magic, Private. It's practice. Thousands of hours of practice. And patience. You have to be willing to fail hundreds of times before you succeed once." "But how do you stay calm?" "During the attack, I mean. I was in the motor pool when it started and I just froze. I couldn't even move. But you were up there, shooting like it was just another day at the range." Maya considered the question carefully. "Fear is normal. Everyone feels it. The difference is what you do with it. I was terrified during the attack. My hands were shaking afterward. But in the moment, I had a job to do. I focused on the job, not the fear." Private Torres nodded slowly. "Do you think I could learn to shoot like you? I mean, not as good, obviously, but better than I am now? I think anyone can improve with the right training and enough dedication. Come find me tomorrow morning. I'll show you some basics." The next morning, Maya arrived at the zeroing range to find not just Private Torres, but 5 other female soldiers waiting for her. Word had spread quickly. The woman who had stopped the attack was offering to teach shooting. Maya looked at the eager faces and felt something shift inside her. For 12 years, she had kept her skills to herself, using them only for the quiet work of maintaining weapons for others to use. But maybe there was another way. Maybe her real purpose was not just to shoot, but to teach others to shoot, to pass on the knowledge her father had given her, to create more soldiers like herself, ready for the moment when their skills would matter. "All right," Maya said, picking up a rifle. "First lesson. The most important part of shooting is not your eyes or your hands. It's your breath. Everything starts with breathing. Watch me." She demonstrated the technique, slow and patient, just as her father had taught her decades ago. The soldiers watched intently, hanging on every word. And for the first time in a long time, Maya felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. 3 weeks later, Colonel Webb returned to Forward Operating Base Sentinel. She had news that would change Maya's life once again. "Staff Sergeant Chen, I have your transfer orders, but before you leave, there's something else." She handed Maya an official document. Maya read it twice, unable to believe what she was seeing. "The Silver Star, ma'am." "That's correct. The ceremony will be next month at Regional Command. But that's not all." Colonel Webb smiled, a rare expression on her stern face. "Your actions have attracted attention at the highest levels. The Sergeant Major of the Army wants to meet you. There's talk of creating a new training program for female marksmen, and they want you to help design it." Maya stared at the document in her hands. A few weeks ago, she had been nobody, an armorer in a dusty workshop, doing a job that nobody noticed. Now she was being called a hero, awarded one of the military's highest honors, and asked to help shape the future of Army training. All because she had been in the right place at the right time. all because she had spent 12 years getting ready for a moment that came without warning. Her father had been right. The best soldiers were not the ones who sought glory. They were the ones who were ready when glory came to them, and Maya Chen had been ready. She looked up at Colonel Webb and nodded. "When do I leave, ma'am?" "Next week. But first I want you to finish what you started here." Maya looked confused. "Ma'am? I've seen what you've been doing with those young soldiers, teaching them to shoot, building their confidence. That's exactly what we need more of. So before you transfer out, I want you to train every female soldier at this base who wants to learn. Give them a foundation. Show them what's possible." Maya smiled, the first genuine smile she had shown since the attack. "Yes, ma'am. It would be my honor." Over the following week, Maya threw herself into teaching with an intensity that surprised even herself. She worked with soldiers from dawn until dusk, correcting their stances, adjusting their grips, helping them understand the physics of bullet trajectory. Some of them improved dramatically. Others struggled, but kept trying. All of them left the range with more confidence than they had arrived with. On her last day at the base, Maya walked through her workshop one final time. The rifles were neatly arranged on their racks. The tools were organized in their drawers. The workbench was clean and ready for whoever would take over her position. She picked up the rifle she had been zeroing when the attack began. Lieutenant Cooper's rifle. It had been returned to her after the investigation, and she had finished zeroing it properly. Every adjustment was perfect now. The rifle was ready for combat, just like her. Maya carried the rifle to Lieutenant Cooper's quarters and handed it to him personally. "It's zeroed, sir. You can count on it." Cooper took the rifle and looked at Maya with newfound respect. He had heard the stories. Everyone had. "Staff Sergeant, I don't know how to thank you. You saved all of us." "I was just doing my job, sir. Same as everyone else." Cooper shook his head. "No, what you did was not the same as everyone else. What you did was extraordinary, and I hope you know that." Maya nodded and turned to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back. "Take care of that rifle, sir. It's a good weapon." "I will, Staff Sergeant. I promise." Maya walked out into the Afghan sunlight, ready for whatever came next. The helicopter that would take her to Regional Command was waiting on the landing pad. Colonel Webb was there to see her off. As Maya climbed aboard, she took one last look at Forward Operating Base Sentinel. The crater from the truck bomb was still visible, a scar on the landscape that would take months to fill. But the base was still standing. The soldiers were still alive. The mission was still continuing, because Staff Sergeant Maya Chen had been zeroing rifles on a random September morning, because she had heard gunfire and grabbed the nearest weapon, because she had climbed a tower and done what she was trained to do. One shot had started it all. One shot that had stopped a truck bomb and saved hundreds of lives. But the story was not over yet. The helicopter lifted off, carrying Maya toward a future she had never imagined. A future where her skills would finally be recognized, where she would help train the next generation of soldiers, where her name would be remembered not just for what she had done, but for what she would do. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen was no longer just an armorer. She was a hero, and she was just getting started. The Silver Star ceremony took place on a crisp October morning at Regional Command Headquarters. The parade ground was filled with soldiers standing at attention, their uniforms pressed and their boots polished to a mirror shine. Flags snapped in the wind. A military band played patriotic music. Television cameras recorded everything for broadcast back home. Maya stood at the center of it all, feeling more uncomfortable than she had during the actual attack. She was not built for ceremonies. She was built for quiet work, for precision, for getting things done without fanfare. But she understood why this mattered. It was not really about her. It was about showing the world what soldiers could do, what women could do. The commanding general read the citation aloud. The words seemed to describe someone else, someone Maya did not recognize. Extraordinary courage under fire, exceptional marksmanship, single-handedly stopping an enemy assault, saving countless lives. The general pinned the silver star on Maya's chest and shook her hand. Applause erupted across the parade ground. Maya stood at attention, blinking against the bright sunlight, wondering how her life had changed so completely in just a few weeks. After the ceremony, she was approached by a tall man in civilian clothes. He had the bearing of a soldier, but there was something different about him, something that suggested he operated in a world that most people never saw. Staff Sergeant Chen, my name is David Mitchell. I work with a special unit that you've probably never heard of. Can we talk privately? Maya followed him to a quiet corner away from the celebration. Mitchell got straight to the point. I've reviewed everything about the attack at Sentinel. The footage, the ballistics analysis, the after-action reports. What you did was remarkable, but it wasn't luck. You have a gift that we don't see very often. Natural talent combined with years of disciplined practice. That combination is extremely rare. Thank you, sir. But I'm just a staff sergeant who happened to be in the right place. Mitchell smiled slightly. That's exactly the kind of humility we look for. The soldiers who boast about their skills are rarely as good as they think they are. The ones who downplay their abilities are usually much better. He handed Maya a business card. I'd like you to consider joining our organization. We train elite marksmen for special operations. The work is classified, and the training is brutal. But if you're interested, this is the number to call. Maya looked at the card. There was no organization name, just a phone number with a Washington, D.C. area code. Can I think about it, sir? Take all the time you need, but don't wait too long. Talents like yours shouldn't be wasted. Maya put the card in her pocket and returned to the celebration, her mind racing with possibilities she had never considered before. The following month, Maya reported to her new assignment at Fort Benning, Georgia. She was attached to a training unit that specialized in advanced marksmanship instruction. Her job was to help develop curriculum and train instructors who would then train soldiers across the Army. It was important work, and Maya threw herself into it completely. She studied the latest research on shooting techniques. She analyzed video of the best marksmen in the world. She worked with sports psychologists to understand the mental aspects of precision shooting. Every piece of knowledge she gained, she incorporated into the training program. The results were impressive. Soldiers who went through the new program showed significant improvements in accuracy and confidence. Instructors who learned Maya's techniques reported better outcomes in their own classes. Word spread through the military community that something special was happening at Fort Benning. But Maya never forgot about the card in her pocket, the mysterious offer from David Mitchell, the chance to do something more. 6 months after the Silver Star ceremony, Maya made the call. The voice that answered was professional and anonymous. Please hold for verification. There was a series of clicks, and then David Mitchell's voice came on the line. Staff Sergeant Chen, I was hoping you'd call. I've been thinking about your offer, sir. I'd like to know more. That's good to hear. How soon can you get to Washington? 2 weeks later, Maya found herself in a nondescript building in Northern Virginia. The sign outside said it was an agricultural research facility, but the security measures told a different story. Armed guards, biometric scanners, blast-resistant doors. Mitchell met her in a conference room decorated with nothing but a blank whiteboard and a few chairs. What I'm about to tell you is classified at the highest levels. If you agree to join us, your life will change dramatically. You'll be away from home for months at a time. You won't be able to talk about your work with anyone, including family. The missions will be dangerous, and some of our people don't come back. Do you understand? Maya nodded. I understand. Good. Then let me tell you what we do. Mitchell walked to the whiteboard and drew a simple diagram. Our unit provides precision fire support for special operations missions. We're not snipers in the traditional sense. We don't do long-term surveillance or reconnaissance. We provide immediate surgical intervention when other options have failed. Hostage rescue? Sometimes. Also counterterrorism, high-value target elimination, and support for operations that officially don't exist. Our people are the best marksmen in the world. They have to be, because when we're called in, there's no room for error. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. This was exactly what she had trained for her entire life. Not the quiet work of maintaining weapons, but the sharp, decisive application of her skills in situations where lives hung in the balance. What would I have to do to join? First, you'd have to pass our selection course. It's 4 weeks of the most intense training you've ever experienced. Physical conditioning, psychological testing, and shooting challenges that would make most experts quit in frustration. About 70% of candidates fail. And if I pass? Then you'd join our active roster. You'd continue to train constantly, maintaining your skills at the highest possible level. And when a mission comes up that requires your specific talents, you'd deploy. No notice, no explanations, just execution. Maya did not hesitate. When does selection start? The selection course was everything Mitchell had promised and more. Maya had thought she was in good shape, but the physical demands pushed her to her absolute limits. 5-mile runs before breakfast, obstacle courses that seemed designed by sadists, swimming with full gear in freezing water. Each day brought new challenges that tested her body and her mind. But the shooting portions were where Maya truly excelled. The courses of fire were unlike anything she had encountered in standard military training. Moving targets at extreme ranges, multiple threats appearing simultaneously, scenarios where innocent civilians were mixed among hostile targets. Every shot had to be perfect, because in the real world, mistakes cost lives. At the end of the second week, the course director called Maya into his office. He was a grizzled master sergeant with a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much. Chen, I've been running this selection course for 8 years. In that time, I've seen hundreds of candidates. Some were talented, some were dedicated, a few were both. But I've never seen anyone shoot the way you do. Thank you, Master Sergeant. I'm not done. Your physical scores are adequate, but just barely. You're not the fastest or the strongest candidate we've ever had, but when you pick up a rifle, you become something else entirely. It's like watching an artist work. Maya did not know how to respond. She had never thought of shooting as art. To her, it was simply math and physics and years of repetitive practice. The question is whether you can maintain that level of performance under real combat stress. Selection exercises are one thing. Actual missions are another. Have you ever shot at a human being who was shooting back at you? Yes, Master Sergeant. At Sentinel. The Master Sergeant nodded slowly. I read the report. Impressive stuff. But Sentinel was reactive. You were responding to an attack that was already happening. What we do is different. We're the ones who initiate. We take the shot before the enemy even knows we're there. Can you do that? Can you end someone's life in cold blood, knowing they never had a chance to fight back? The question hung in the air. Maya had thought about this many times since Mitchell's offer. Taking a life was not something to be done lightly. Every bullet carried a moral weight that would stay with her forever. Master Sergeant, I believe that sometimes the only way to protect innocent lives is to take guilty ones. If I'm certain that my target is someone who will hurt others, someone who has chosen violence and evil, then yes, I can take that shot. The Master Sergeant studied her face for a long moment. Good answer. Most candidates either say yes too quickly, which means they haven't really thought about it, or they hesitate too long, which means they'll freeze when the moment comes. You answered honestly. That's what we need. Maya completed the selection course and was assigned to an operational team. The next 2 years were the most intense of her life. She trained constantly, maintaining her skills at a razor edge. She deployed on missions that she would never be able to talk about, to places that officially did not exist, doing things that would never be acknowledged. Some missions were surgical and clean. A single shot, a problem eliminated, a world made slightly safer. Other missions were chaotic and terrifying, with bullets flying and plans falling apart and survival depending on split-second decisions. Through it all, Maya learned something important about herself. She was not just a marksman, she was a leader. When things went wrong, when the pressure was unbearable, when other operators were on the edge of panic, Maya became the calm center that held everything together. Her steady voice, her precise instructions, her absolute focus under fire. These qualities made her invaluable to her team. By the end of her second year with the unit, Maya had been promoted to team leader. She was responsible for 4 other operators, each of them an exceptional marksman in their own right. Together, they formed one of the most effective precision teams in the entire special operations community. The mission that would define Maya's career came on a rainy November night in a city she was not allowed to name. A terrorist cell had taken hostages in a commercial building. 43 civilians, including 12 children. The terrorists were demanding the release of prisoners held in various countries, and they had already executed 2 hostages to prove they were serious. Standard assault tactics were considered too risky. The building had multiple entrances, all of them booby-trapped. The terrorists were using the hostages as human shields. Any attempt to storm the building would result in massive casualties. Maya's team was called in as a last resort. They set up positions on 3 buildings surrounding the target. From their elevated vantage points, they could see into most of the rooms through thermal imaging and drone surveillance. Maya studied the layout carefully, identifying each terrorist, each hostage, each obstacle. There were 8 terrorists in total. They were positioned throughout the building, never all visible at once. To succeed, Maya's team would need to eliminate all 8 simultaneously. If even one survived the initial assault, they would have time to kill hostages before the ground team could reach them. 8 targets, 5 shooters. 3 shots would need to be perfect doubles, hitting 2 targets within a second of each other. Maya assigned the targets based on each operator's strengths. 2 of the easier shots went to her less experienced team members. The hardest shots, including one of the doubles, she kept for herself. "We execute in 15 minutes, she said over the radio. "Final checks now." Each team member confirmed their position, their sight picture, their readiness. Maya checked her own rifle one last time. It was the same model she had been using for years, tuned and maintained to her exact specifications. She trusted it completely. The minutes ticked by with agonizing slowness. Maya watched her targets through her scope. 2 terrorists in a conference room, one standing near the window, one sitting at a table. They were 15 meters apart. She would need to hit the standing target first, then immediately shift to the sitting target before he could react. "All stations, final countdown, 10 seconds. Maya took a deep breath and let it out slowly. Her heartbeat slowed. The rain falling on her position faded to nothing. The entire world narrowed to the 2 men in her scope. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. Execute. Maya squeezed the trigger. The standing terrorist crumpled. She was already moving, her scope tracking to the right, finding the sitting target. He was just beginning to react, his head turning toward the sound of the first impact. Maya fired again. Both targets were down in less than 2 seconds. Across the city, 6 more shots rang out simultaneously. 6 more terrorists fell. "All targets eliminated," Maya reported. "Ground team, you are clear to breach." The assault force moved in, sweeping through the building with professional efficiency. The hostages were terrified but unharmed. The children were crying but alive. In the end, not a single innocent life was lost. The mission was a complete success. The debriefing lasted for hours. Every shot was analyzed, every decision scrutinized. The after-action report would be studied by military planners for years to come. But for Maya, the most important moment came when she saw the hostages being reunited with their families. A mother embracing her daughter, a husband holding his wife, children running into the arms of parents who had feared they would never see them again. This was why she did what she did. Not for medals or recognition or glory, but for moments like this, moments when her skills made the difference between tragedy and salvation. Maya returned to base and cleaned her rifle, just as she had done thousands of times before. The familiar motions were soothing, almost meditative. She had taken lives tonight. That weight would stay with her forever. But she had also saved lives. 43 lives, including 12 children. The math was brutal, but clear. As she finished cleaning the rifle, her thoughts drifted back to that day at Forward Operating Base Sentinel. The dusty workshop, the observation tower, the truck racing toward the center of the base. She had been just zeroing rifles, that was all. A routine job on a routine morning, until one shot changed everything. That single bullet, fired at a moving target 400 meters away, had started Maya on a journey she never expected. It had revealed her true capabilities. It had opened doors that she had not even known existed. It had led her to this moment in a classified facility on a rainy night, having just helped save 43 innocent people. Maya put the rifle away and looked at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was different from the staff sergeant who had served quietly for 12 years. She had been tested in ways that most people could not imagine. She had proven herself again and again. She had become exactly what her father had predicted she would be, a soldier who was ready when glory came to her. The rain continued to fall outside. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new missions, new opportunities to use her skills in service of something greater than herself. Maya was ready for all of it. Because she understood now that the bullet at Sentinel had not just stopped a truck, it had started a new chapter in her life, a chapter that was still being written, one shot at a time. Staff Sergeant Maya Chen turned off the lights and headed to her quarters. She needed rest. The next mission could come at any moment, and she had to be ready. She always had to be ready. That was what heroes did. And whether she liked the title or not, that was exactly what she had become. Not because she had sought glory or recognition, but because when the moment came, when everything was on the line, she had done what needed to be done. One shot at a time. The story of the armorer who became a hero would be told for generations. Young soldiers would hear about the woman who stopped an assault from an observation tower, who went on to become one of the most effective operators in special operations history. They would be inspired by her example. They would push themselves to be better, to be ready, to prepare for their own moment of truth. And somewhere, in workshops and training ranges across the military, other women would pick up rifles and begin their own journeys. They would remember Maya Chen and know that anything was possible. Because sometimes, heroes were not born in dramatic battles or legendary campaigns. Sometimes heroes were made in quiet moments, doing routine jobs, waiting for the shot that would change everything. Maya Chen had been zeroing rifles, and one shot had turned her into a legend.